I'm Graham Vershare from Summer of '84, and you're listening to Without Your Head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neil, the terrible one. He'll be here. I would make up something cool, like he's on secret without your head business, collecting decapitation, something. But he's actually stuck in traffic, so he'll be here at some point. But we do have the return of James Burton here, comic book artist. He's also host of Chaotic Good podcast, right on Without Your Head. It's good to have you back.
I am super stoked to be back, Neil. It's been a long time since I got to grace the Without the Head audience, man.
Yeah. So you got a lot of cool things out coming out. One thing's really cool, I think, especially for Without Your Head fans, Edgar Allan Poe anthology. Give everyone an idea what this is.
Okay, dokie. Let's see here. Well, last year I did a Kickstarter for Damage Incorporated, and I had a lot of fun with it. I totally enjoyed it. I made it through the goal. And as I was trying to fulfill the entire thing, a bunch of weird stuff started happening. And before I realized it, my day job had kind of dropped me into a place where I was under a major creator's block. And I was looking for something that was going to snap me out of it, because it was driving me crazy. I was having the worst time focusing and creating and whatnot. And what ended up doing it was, I'm a part of this group called Comics Lunch, and it's a group of people brought together by Tyler James that they all help each other and learn and do whatever they can to go ahead and make the best comic books out there. James Macia is one of those badass other creators. And he was putting together this Edgar Allan Poe anthology where it's kind of a reimagining with 13 different comic book teams from rising indie stars like myself, Clay Adams, Russell Nolte, who is a badass author, is on there. We all got together and we kind of broke up a ton of Edgar Allan Poe's material and then put our spin on it. So there's some really wild takes on there. Like, for example, My Guy's Damage Incorporated. That comic book is about a bunch of buddies who go out and they start a club to hunt down supernatural creatures and superpowered metahumans, all for bounties. Problem is they suck at it. So it usually ends up in gunfire, explosions, and a lot of smack talk. I took that concept and I drug it kicking and screaming into Edgar Allan Poe's world. And I also worked with a writer named Jeff Aragon. And Jeff wrote a story where we did his version of The Mummy and mixed it up with the traditional gunfights and smack talk that Damaging Inc. tends to bring to the table. It was so much fun, Neil. I found myself creating like faster than normal. I love doing black and white. I love it. Now, this Kickstarter, like I said, it's already funded. We hit, I think within 24 hours, that sucker had already funded. Yeah, look, I've been a part of different Kickstarters, and I absolutely enjoy watching the other creators and whatnot. Mine took a little bit longer than that to go ahead and get funded, but this one blew through it. We're actually on our second second extended goal right now. And I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's got to mean, it goes without saying, it's going to be a good feeling that people are that supportive to see it happen. Do you find that it's mostly people that already read your stuff that were supporting the new project?
Well, Kickstarter brings a lot of different eyes to the table, and one of the things about this one is because there are 13 different teams, there is a lot more eyes involved. So I'm sure some of my fans have gotten in there and pitched up into there to get a hold of another Damage Inc. story. But one of the things that happened is, how Kickstarter, the crew at Kickstarter, they pick the things they love, and then they label them in a special category. Within the first day, we actually got put into that category because there are so many creators into it. There's 176 backers already, actually. It's pretty exciting. So there's been a lot more fans than just mine on there. I'm sure there's some returning. But like I said, dude, there's a lot of different groups all coming together to make this. So it's pretty exciting from that standpoint too.
Yeah. So, did you said that you had like stretch goals? What happens when they reach those?
Well, the stretch goal that we're working on right now that we're really close to doing, I think we're at like $4,700. When that thing hits 5,000, it's actually going to add a 14th story into the book for a stretch goal.
Oh, nice.
We already passed one where we added a few extra pages with some beautiful artwork. There was the second one was where these set of Poe buttons. So there's this one really crazy looking Poe button where Poe is breaking chains like Superman. That's what happens when you let a bunch of comic artists review classic Poe material.
I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty awesome.
It is pretty awesome. That was one of my favorite ones. It's one of the alternate covers. And then the next one though is there's actually another story that we're going to be putting in there by Eric Haley, and that one is pretty much up to it if we get to the 5,000 mark, and we're so flipping close. It's around the corner. I'd love to see a 14th story. I'm pretty proud of the work that everybody put into this one.
Is everyone's story like different, like tone wise? Like, are some more comedic, maybe, and some more serious? Or are they all kind of?
Well, that's the thing. Having all these different teams working on it, each one of them has a completely different take on the Poe stories. So there's a few that took it really seriously, and they reviewed the material and just kind of put it in modern times. There's some who, like, Death Trap is probably my personal favorite of the whole book. That's Clay Adams' team. Kyle Roberts' art on that one. He did these really intense grayscales of a guy getting stuck with the whole pit and the pendulum, between the pit and the pendulum and the crazy rats. And that was actually my favorite Poe story growing up. It was the first one I heard. And it was kind of the story that defined what horror is to me, because it's so visceral. It talks about rat pets and all that other stuff. That one's got a completely different tone than, say, the Damage book, where the Damage book is like action comedy and a really creepy bad guy called Teshu, which is the basically the mummy. So each one of them, it ranges from the serious and the crazy looking horror all the way down to something that's more campy like Damage, because Damage's stories are usually more like Dale and Tucker, Army of Darkness, where it's a campy kind of horror. We're usually making fun of everything as we shoot it, right? And some of them took it like super duper serious, where they've got like scenes where they're talking to spirits and seeing ghosts. But honestly, man, it's all kinds of different takes on the Poe story. So there's a little bit of something for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there a mummy in a Poe story? I didn't know about this.
Yeah, there is. The Poe story that I picked, that Jeff and I worked on, is called The Mummy Speaks. And it's this story about these archaeologists who end up arguing with this mummy that will not shut up. And it was kind of inspiring to us. So we turned it into like this creepy story that happens underground where Damage has been sent to recover the mummy, and there's just a whole bunch of guys get shot, and they end up in this creepy cave arguing with the mummy, just like they do in the other story, but with a lot more sarcasm.
Yeah. Was that a story you were aware of before this project, or like when the project came up, did you start to look at the stuff?
I had never heard of it. I took the list of the Edgar Allan Poe stories and just started looking for one that I thought that I would enjoy doing. And I think that's what broke me out of my creator's block, because I was looking for something I thought I would enjoy and that would make me laugh and make me feel like I wanted to pull the trigger again on my books. And I started reading this. It was already meant to be a sarcastic story. It's actually defined as one of Poe's science fiction stories, which I thought was odd. I didn't even know he wrote science fiction until I was on this project.
That's interesting, because I think, there's a core set of Poe stuff that I think a lot of people know, and it's interesting that, to explore and find out some of his other work.
Right, like The Raven, right? Everybody knows The Raven.
Yeah.
The Pit and the Pendulum. Yeah, exactly. There's these stories. What's the one where the guy gets buried behind the wall?
Telltale Heart.
Telltale Heart, yeah. So those are the ones that are always in everybody's forefront mind. What James Macia did, he's the guy in charge of the project. He had the idea to basically take all the list of all the Poe stories and ask all of us to, bring it to him how we wanted to. And I think the freedom of that project was a big part of what made me attracted to it so much. I wanted to respect the Poe stories. I'd like, for example, I don't think a story about Damage Inc. chasing down a crow and shooting it would have been very entertaining. That might have gotten old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I don't really think I wanted to argue with FEMA, or SPCA and all that other stuff. So it was more fun to take something that I didn't know about and just dive into it really crazy. And Jeff Aragon, the writer with my piece, he really did a good job of writing up the story, and he was looking at it and trying to have fun with it in the same way, and we just kind of gelled. It came out as a story that I'm really proud of, and I'm just stoked to be a part of it. It's really great seeing all these other creators just getting on board with it. It's a great group of guys that I've been around inside of the Comics Launch program, and they all just kind of shared and helped each other get the books done. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, but you already answered it, though. But, so they gave everyone like a list of stuff to go over, a list of the different stories. So I assume so like 2 or 3 people didn't pick the same story.
You know what? I'm not 100% sure.
No.
This thing is over 100 pages long. I can't claim that I read every single one of the stories.
Right.
I read like 4 or 5 of them. I've read like 4 or 5 of them that I totally enjoyed, and I've seen the list of all the different ones, but we all also kind of like renamed our tales. So, and somebody could have overlapped. And remember, the stories are so different. Somebody could have told their vision of the Telltale Heart and told it in a modern, telling, like maybe an angry plumber locked him into a ditch and buried him. Whereas in another one, it's something where it's more traditional, and it would have looked so different that I might not have noticed.
Yeah, that's true. Kickstarter, the only problem with Kickstarter is hard to put up the URL. I'll put up the URL. It's hard to say the URL. It's very long. But just search for the... I can take care of that, man. If everybody goes to my website, I've got a link set up where it's Poe angrybrainartworks.com, and it'll take everybody right to the Kickstarter. Very good. That's always a smart way to do it. You would think, though,
I learned
the Kickstarter people would have a better URL system.
Yeah, how dare the internet require so many digits?
Exactly. I'm just looking
it's
here.
It's a conspiracy.
I love all the different artwork. I think there is something about Edgar Allan Poe breaking out of the chains that really is pretty awesome. But then you have the more traditional dark one that's really cool too.
Yeah, dude, he was such a crazy dude. Like, I mean, he really was one of those geniuses that had madness like knocking on his door 24/7. And I think that's what attracts everybody to like his stories, and it's where you can imagine in your head Edgar Allan Poe knocking back some absinthe, breaking some chains, whooping some bottom in one thing, and then on another page you can completely imagine him like talking to an ectoplasmic entity that's swirling across the entire sky. Both of those stories make sense in the world of Poe, you know.
Mm-hmm. The first time I had you on the show was for a different project, and then later on you started doing Damage Inc. I think the second time we had you on. How has that grown over the time when you started it? And I know when you started, it was like something very personal to you.
Yeah, Damage Inc. It was very personal to me. It's based on growing up and finding ways to stay out of trouble, and so it's personal because it's kind of like an ode to all the friends and games that we played to stay out of places we shouldn't have been at. It's grown in a way where I've got the 3rd issue completed and the 4th issue is close to being done. As far as like issues go, I've probably I know I've sold a lot. I've sold a lot at each one of the conventions that I've been to, and I've been lucky enough to get reviewed by some websites. And I am trying to get another damaging Kickstarter for later on in the year. I've got at least like 4 or 5 more scripts ready to go after that one, and it's been a lot of fun. One of my favorite things is meeting people at the cons, getting to meet both brand new fans and fans that have come back, and it's the kind of valuation that makes you feel really good inside when somebody is willing to sit down and pay attention to something you created. One fan, for example, brought me cupcakes at one of the conventions.
That's very cool.
It was very cool. Unfortunately, my son had been sick. I had to leave the convention early. So, Kira, if you remember my sister, she's one of the other co-hosts on Chaotic Good, and she was at the con with me, tabling next to me. And when the fan showed up, she ate my cupcakes.
They were good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Apparently, they were absolutely delicious, and I really should have gotten my butt in where I should have been. That's the kind of fun stuff you miss when you're dealing with sick kids. It's just you got to avoid those things when you can.
Now I know you were always close with your sister, but doing the comic book and having her as a character, and then doing the podcast together, have you guys become closer over the last few years?
Yeah, Kira talks about that a lot with me. We weren't really close after I left the house as an adult and whatnot. But after I survived the cancer, which we talked about in the inheritance episode, after I survived cancer, she kind of made a big point of making sure that she was able to reach out to me, and we kind of rebuilt that. And as I've been doing all this creating, she's been doing poetry, and she's been selling them at the cons along with me, and she's been participating in Chaotic Good along with my buddy Kender, and doing a lot of great stuff. I'm actually really proud of Kira. Kira's had her own struggles with manic depression and whatnot, and right now she just got put on the board for a charity group that's about suicide prevention. She's doing a lot of good work with them. It's called Out of the Darkness. And as a matter of fact, they've got a campus walk at the UCM in Missouri coming up on April 21st. And we've gotten really close over the last few years, kind of exploring all the stuff that we've both been through. And it's been a crazy, wild roller coaster ride, but I'm pretty proud of her.
Yeah, that's a nice story though, that you guys have got closer and worked together, on these projects. With her battle, I don't know how much you could speak of this. With her battling, depression throughout the years, I assume that suicide prevention would be something close to her. Were there times, through your relationship over the years that you ever thought like she was close to ever think of doing something like that?
Me, man, mental health is a huge thing in our family. It's been crazy. It's a little hard for me to describe because the way we got raised in the environment we got in, we had. I could talk on the podcast for like 5 or 6 hours just about how crazy my mom was all by itself. But there's been a lot of challenges, and I think with her, it was far worse than even how it was with me. And all of my sisters kind of went through a different version of it than I did. There's 9 of us if you count my step siblings. And everybody's been through their own version of it. And we got to see parents that were lost in addiction. We got to see parents who didn't care about themselves, and that translated, as adults, that translated into some really horrific experiences. And Kira's has been pretty rough going. She's done a lot of work with herself and with not giving up to try to be a part of other bigger things. And I'm really proud of her for that. A lot of people, when they're stuck in those situations, they forget how to love themselves enough to think that they're worth getting through it. And they forget about how the people that really care about them, and they get locked in their own frustration and their own sadness, and it's really hard to see the light through that stuff. Kira works a lot on trying to help other people kind of see those mental health issues as mental health issues and not just things to be punished for. I mean, we're old enough to remember when, if you tried to talk about mental health issues with people, that you didn't just get like disbelieved, you literally got your butt kicked or got called a freak and fruit thrown at you or all kinds of weird stuff. We grew up in this little hick town out in the middle of California where if you weren't into sports and you weren't into like FFA, that you were just some crazy weirdo, and it spawned a lot of craziness. We saw a lot of stuff.
So the group is you got with Chaotic Good and the group here. You're trying to like show that if you're a fan of something or if you get involved in something, if it's something a lot of other people might think's weird or something, it helps you because you're with like-minded people, and it's it's something. I know even myself just doing that. I was always battled depression my whole life, so doing the show has helped me tremendously over the last 12 years because it's something you're proud of doing. You meet other people who like things you like, and it's I don't want to say it gives you something, but it does. It gives you something to look forward to.
It absolutely gives you something. Everybody has a thing that they love, and a lot of people try to tear that down or make fun of it if they don't understand it. Fandom helps a lot of people. Like one of the things that Kira is saying right now is that cosplay saves lives. She's got a hashtag going, hashtag cosplay saves lives. And the reason why she talks about that is that as Kira and I started going to these cons, we started meeting more and more cosplayers, and we started running into all these different stories from people who were being marginalized. And it ranges from the really big buff dude who likes Hello Kitty but can't talk about it, or the brony who has to hide the fact that he's a brony from the people in his own family, or at one of the cons, and this meant a lot to Kira, at one of the cons, she actually had this transgender teen come up and start talking to her with her closest friend. And it was a really positive experience for Kira because she got to sit down and talk with them, and the kids started reading her books of poetry, and she came back later on and just talked to Kira about how much some of the poems meant to her. It was a way of connecting with this whole group of people that for the longest time, in the places where we grew up, that wasn't the case. And finding your way into finding people that want to support who you are and what you're doing is something I think everybody needs to be able to find. And when you are finding those fandoms and when you're finding those things that you love, I mean, dude, I know people who get chastised for everything from, enjoying wrestling to trying to just enjoy themselves whenever they want to sit down and read a book. Being marginalized comes in all kinds of different forms. I would imagine that there's even guys out there that really enjoy watching football, but they're in a place where they're surrounded by a whole bunch of geeks that don't want to put up with that crap.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It can go both ways.
Yeah, exactly. Being marginalized sucks. It doesn't really matter where it is or why it is. It's a bunch of bullshit, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing on Chaotic Good and a lot of the stuff Kira's doing with Out of the Darkness is to try to speak to that and to try to help people move beyond it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people, will put down the internet because there are a lot of bad things that do come with the internet. But there are a lot of good things. Like, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of negative stuff, but there are a lot of positive things. And one of the positive things I think is, you do find people who have common interests. Like, not everyone's into Dungeons and Dragons or wrestling or whatever it is you're into. Maybe where you live, but then you get online and you find these other people that are into that, and you can have friends and groups, maybe it's just online, and eventually maybe you can meet or whatever. But still having those people, those friends, and the online communities, that's something.
Exactly, man. Finding that surrogate family through your fandom, it can help you find a piece that you didn't know existed. The first time that I got to make a comic book and take it to a convention, I've talked about that on your podcast before, when the pirate came up and bought my book. It felt so different than how I'd been feeling for the years up to that point. Being able to work with other people who understand and identify with you and want to see you create, want to see you be a part of something bigger is a healing experience in a lot of ways. And yeah, man, fandom saves lives, cosplay saves lives, comics saves lives. All those things, those people can find a way out of that darkness they're in when they find something they love.
For people who want to find more information on that, Chaotic Good's on the Without Your Head site, and you guys also have a Chaotic Good page on Facebook. But how can you find more information about this specific group?
That specific group, the UCM and let me get to it, and the Out of the Darkness group, they're kind of working on that part right now. But if somebody wanted to go and be a part of the campus walk and find out a lot more about the stuff that they're doing, right now that would be at affsp.org/UCMO. And that would lead you guys over to the information for that campus walk where they're working hard on that. And there's going to be a little bit more information about that later, and Chaotic Good is definitely going to be talking about that. As a matter of fact, the last few episodes, we've had April, and she's been on there with Kira doing an interview and talking about all kinds of awesome stuff that they're working on. And it's uplifting. April's got this really infectious, bright personality, and she absolutely deserves to have your ear, especially if you've gotten into a spot where you need to hear about her story, because her family has already been through some of that. So I definitely suggest anybody who wants to know more, they listen to those Chaotic Good episodes, and anybody down in that Missouri area kind of takes part in that walk, and they'll find out a ton more. As far as the stuff, go ahead.
Go on, sorry. No, go on, sorry. I'll ask you in a minute.
Oh, no. I was going to say, as far as for me, Angry Brain Artworks is always a good way to find me. I've got some con appearances coming up, too, so I'm going to be at Sacramento Comic Con, SacCon, on April 15th, and I'm going to be out in the Oroville, out in the OroCon, in June 2nd, and at Free Comic Book Day, there's one of my favorite comic shops is Ken's Comics in Rockland, and I'm going to be out there hanging out with Ken and with my brothers from Scattered Comics. I got Keith coming out there with me. He's this great author that wrote a story called Blank. It's this amazing noir story that's kind of creepy and crazy, and we're all going to be having a lot of fun on that day. It's going to be a signing.
Very cool. So I was going to ask with all these projects and work and family, do you still find time to play any games? If so, are there any new games out there that you would recommend? I mean, like board games or role-playing games or card games.
Gotcha.
Like physical games.
Well, I've been teaching my daughter and her cousins to play 5th edition D&D, and I test played some 5th edition, and I've enjoyed it. It's got a lot of balance to it. It doesn't have the exact flavor of some of the hardcore I will kill your character old school stuff that I love. It doesn't have that same sense of humor where in the middle of rolling up your character, you can actually be killed by a donkey stampede. I love that stuff. But I've been playing with them a little bit, and I have taken the time to help some of the groups who have been trying to create their own storylines. Like Kender on Chaotic Good, he's busting ass and being a dungeon master up in Seattle. And another one of my buddies, Mike, is jamming a great group down here in Sacramento. But in all honesty, Neil, I am doing so much stuff and trying to stay active as a father. And I took on this great new day job that is an hour and a half from my house. So my time has made it so it's very difficult for me to find a way to get behind my gaming shield and rock the table the way that I know that I love doing.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, dude. I miss it.
Yeah, definitely. It was my friend Jason who does the reviews on the site for my birthday. He got me the John Carpenter's The Thing board game, which I'm very excited about. I haven't had a chance to play it, but I plan on taking it with me to Texas Frightmare, and we can get a group of people hopefully together to play it. So it looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, there's some amazing board games coming out right now. If anybody has the time to go into the Kickstarter channel for board games, they will find the craziest, most amazing stuff. There's a Batman game on there that's broken like multiple $1 million right now. It's insane. There's a lot of stuff going on inside of the board game area. One gaming company that I used to really enjoy is called Palladium Books. They had one on there last year for Robotech that did fantastic, and there's just a lot of really good stuff coming out of them. The indie gaming scene is really exploding right now because of Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Even like it's a card game, but it was like Exploding Kittens at the time. I think broke the record for most.
Yeah,
which was a fun game. I bought it, played. Yeah.
That one, Cards Against Humanities.
Yeah, that's another one. Which I didn't think I would like, but we played it last year in Texas, and I have to admit I had a good time playing it.
Yeah.
If Kickstarter would have been around when I was a kid, though, and we had like the group of people that always played games and stuff, we would just spend all our money, I think, on Kickstarter. But you buy all these miniature board games and different stuff. Because I look at it now and I have to think, well, I don't really have anyone around that would probably play with me, or else I'd get this. But there's like so many cool ones that look awesome, especially because I always like the miniature stuff and all the cool miniatures.
Oh God, yes. It's so easy to lose yourself in the wonders of Kickstarter with all the stuff that they do. I honestly, man, just in the comics area alone, the only thing keeping me from like blowing every dime I own inside of that category is the fact that I got to feed my children.
Right. Yeah, I will say I just recently did give some money to someone started a Kickstarter to make patches and enamel pins off old like Monster Manual Dungeons and Dragons monsters, and so I had to put some money into that. So I think I have a Rust Monster and a Beholder coming, which I'm very excited about. Especially the Rust Monster. I've never seen a Rust Monster like made into a patch before. That's pretty cool.
No, usually everybody's too busy having nightmares about losing armor and just screaming and running. I think the Rust Monster, despite the fact that it never kills anybody, is probably one of the scariest things to most players because all they can think of is losing all their magic gear and running to the hills.
Right. There was a few monsters like that. There was a Rust Monster. Did the Gelatinous Cube take your stuff?
Oh God, the Gelatinous Cube. I have the weirdest thing about Gelatinous Cubes. There's something about them and Mimics that I can't seem to either defeat or stay away from. I actually just did a cover for Knights of the Dinner Table.
Oh, I love that.
It's really popular. Yeah, I love Knights of the Dinner Table. Jolly Blackburn does it, and I've been lucky enough to be allowed to do some of those covers. Just a few months ago, I actually did a cover where it's a gelatinous cube and it's eating all the players in their game. And it's actually because of a live session that I had while testing 5th edition, where the GM sucked me into a gelatinous cube and beat the living hell out of my character. Those things I don't know what it is about them. I can't stay away from them, and I can't defeat them. They just end up kicking my ass every time I run into them.
Do you remember I never really played these at the time, the VCR games, but when I was at a convention recently, Jason brought Nightmare, and we played it. I have to admit, it was.
I had Nightmare.
Yeah.
I had Nightmare as a kid, dude.
Yeah, so I probably might have played it once, but I didn't have memory of it. And that guy, like, I was the oldest person in the group, so he was like, "Oh, you old one!" And so then I actually tried to get that guy on the show. I found out he's like a big actor in Belarus now, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Oh, that is cool. I remember playing that game a ton when it came out. It's been a long time, but I completely remember having fun where I think the first time we played it, it was like 5 or 6 of us in like the house alone. And we took it so far as like we waited till it was like a rainy night, and I happened to be living in an apartment that was across the street from a graveyard.
Uh,
And that's when we decided to play it, because you got to make it worse.
exactly. I have thought of filming my own version, and then you can play along with the board game. So I might do that. We'll figure it out.
Dude, that sounds like a lot of fun. I want to see the Without Your Head board game video edition. That'd be badass.
That would be sweet. Yeah, I think Troy could make some figures. He's made some stuff. That would be a good time.
Hell yeah, get that sucker on Kickstarter. It'd be great, dude. Think about it this way. You could put a towel on your head, pretend to be, an emissary of death, and then yell at people. There's nothing bad about that.
Exactly. Maybe we would get like some cameos from former guests. I'm sure some people will do it. That'd be fun.
Oh, dude, that'd be badass. Heck yeah. I want to see that, Neil. You got to get that going on.
I like this idea. I do. It sounds like a lot of fun to me. So, what was another cool for me doing the show is I love doing the show anyway, but it is cool when like if I'll see like independent filmmaker will buddy up with someone who I've had on the show, when they collaborate, and it was cool for me to see one of the bands I had on the show make it into your comic book.
Oh God, yes! I love the Bloodstrings, man. When I heard them on your show, and I got so excited, I think I was calling you like the second that the show was over, or did I call when they were? I think it was right afterwards or something. You introduced me to Doc and stuff like that, and I enjoy rockabilly a lot, but they have their own breed of that, which is like this punk rock punkabilly. And they were nice enough to let me put them into the issue of Damage Inc. So the storyline that's going on right now is the Damage Inc. bounty hunters have to go into a club, and they have to arrest the owners of the club. And the Bloodstrings are actually playing at the same club. So as you're running around in this comic and watching Damage Inc. Fight people and shoot guns, the Bloodstrings are actually playing in the background. And it's a lot of fun inside of the book. I get to, draw pictures of Mina, the lead singer, like screaming into the microphone, and that big bass that Doc carries and stuff. And I've enjoyed doing it so much because I get to sit there and listen to their music like over and over in my head when I'm drawing the book, and it keeps me jazzed and excited. I love the Born Sick, the new album, and I absolutely love Dine in Hell and stuff like that. I enjoy their stuff a lot, man.
Yeah, I do too. They have some really cool videos too.
Yeah, the video on Dine in Hell is really great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was really cool for me. It's like, hey, this guy on the show, he's a very nice guy. He does a podcast, and then this family on the show, and they get together and make something. I was like, that's pretty cool. But I'm glad it was
totally exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad people dig the music. It is fun to you're not gonna always like every type of music's on the show. I try to mix it up, with different styles. But so it's cool though. You're gonna get something different every month, and hopefully you'll find something you like.
Yeah, I did. It definitely clicked with them. I like watching all their weird videos where they're touring in like remote punk clubs in Europe and stuff. That sounds like it would be absolutely fun, like being in the van with them and cruising around as they go to these shows. I hope that they do a lot more of showing what they go through when they're on tour, because I found that highly entertaining. Yeah,
I do too. I like that kind of stuff. So you said you have some on your site upcoming conventions. Do you know offhand of any?
Yeah, the conventions I've got scheduled, I lightened it up this year a little bit because of the day job that I'm having to deal with at the moment. I'm proud of the stuff that I'm doing, but at the same time, it needed a certain level of focus. In April 15th, I'm going to be at SatCon, and that's in Sacramento. I'm going to be in Oroville at the Oricon on June 2nd. I'm going to be in the Free Comic Book Day at Ken's Comics in Rockland, which is May 5th. And I'm going to be at Santa Rosa, which I believe is in August. I'm almost positive. I got to check on that, but it's in August.
Very cool. Honestly,
Yeah.
I love your Angry Brains logo, by the way.
Yeah, I love that logo too. I was excited to make it. It took me forever to get it right. I kept drawing like different angry characters to try to make them work inside of my head, and kept backfiring and screwing them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be the other con was the Santa Rosa Comic Con, which I'll be at in September. They've got a lot of cool guests at that one. They've got like Lou Diamond Phillips and Adam Ballroom. When I was there last year, I met like my first celebrity going to the cons. I met Michelle Nichols, and she's the actress from the original Star Trek who played Uhura. One of the things that I make for Damaging, because I've got this shirt that says "I killed your bitch ass character" on the front of it. You know, it's a gaming nod. It makes a lot of people laugh. She was in the green room, and I ran in there to get a Twinkie. I'm a fat kid. I run to get Twinkies. That's how it is. And I bursted in the room all Kramer style and stopped like dead because she was sitting like right there in front of me. I was like, "Er!" And she looked at me, read my shirt, looked back at me, and she goes, "All of them? Really?" And I looked down and realized what she was talking about, and I said, "Yep, every damn one of them." And she ended up like not turning her head away from me and like laughing as she was leaving the green room. I wasn't sure if she was messing with me or if she was truly disappointed in my shirt. I was too ashamed to go back and talk to her.
That's pretty awesome. Do you collect anything? I know you're there, you know, with your stuff, but do you collect anything when you're at the conventions?
It is so hard not to.
Right.
My son, he collects certain pops. Like he would have all the pops if he could, but I keep an eye out for like Ghostbuster pops and Turtles pops for him, and try to get those for him. And I collect certain manga titles for my daughter. If I let myself buy stuff when I'm at the con for me, I will absolutely leave broke. And I have been so tempted. One of the coolest parts about Santa Rosa is that there's always these vintage toy dealers. And when I was little, one of the things I collected a lot of was G.I. Joes. And there's a guy that is there every year at Santa Rosa. He has everything. And I go into like withdrawal shakes when I walk by his booth. Dude, he's got like, you know, the whole, he's got the big aircraft carrier. He's got all the airplanes that when I was little I couldn't get a hold of. You know, all that stuff, man. Like the Sergeant Slaughter hovercraft, which is something I absolutely needed as a child. That kind of stuff, man. Honest, swear to God, if I wasn't a father, I would go so broke that I would have so many toys.
Mm-hmm. I actually have the Sergeant Slaughter mail-away figure here underneath my desk. Well, underneath my computer here.
Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah. He was one of my favorite characters on them. That was right about when I started watching wrestling. So I didn't even know that he was a wrestler. I just knew he was on G.I. Joe and was like super excited. And then when I saw him on wrestling later, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, G.I. Joe come to life.
Exactly. That's what I thought it was. I was like 9.
Yeah, my friend had the aircraft carrier, and it was almost like too big to really do much with. It just kind of sat there, but it really was awesome just because it was so enormous.
Yeah, it did just sit there, but any kid who had it had bragging rights.
Oh yeah. Because like most things like that were made of like a big vehicle were scaled down a lot. You know, like the guys would fit in it, but size-wise, it was much smaller. But that was like to scale, like to scale
yeah.
aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it was the kind of thing that when you built it in your room was built like all your furniture had to be moved around to fit it.
Yeah, he had it. I don't think he could even fit in there. He had it in his basement. Yeah, I remember it was just so gigantic, but it was pretty awesome.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Was that your favorite line?
Filled with aircraft carriers.
Was that your favorite line of toys, JoJo?
I'd say it was He-Man was probably the one that I was the most like obsessed with as a kid. When I was 5 years old, man, He-Man was God. And I think the thing was that He-Man ended kind of abruptly and soon, and then you couldn't get the toys anymore, period. But G.I. Joe kept going, you know? So that you could still get those action figures, whereas it was almost impossible to get the other one. So at a certain point, I just kind of changed over to the other one.
We had the best toys though at that era, G.I. Joe, He-Man, stuff like that. But the thing about the G.I. Joes, I think, that beat all the other toys at the time was the points of articulation. They had the best movement. That's why I always used them as my wrestling figures, because they moved. The wrestling figures at the time were always really bad to play with. They were just like big hunks of rubber, or like they had very little movement. But the G.I. Joes, you could do anything with.
Well, eventually you had like the wrestling buddies, though, man. The ones that were still the fluff. You could actually do an elbow drop on those, jump off your couch and just slam into it. Boom. That you could do. That was fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, the G.I. Joes, you could move them around and use them in any way you could. I actually, when I was doing that and playing, it was before I had created Damage as Damage Inc. I always had different names for it before I had gotten to the point where I knew how to write and knew how to create. And I would try to like piece the G.I. Joes together to make things as like close to what I had in my head as possible.
Uh-huh. Did you use
make
any
like little
character for
versions
yourself?
of Angry Brain and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Angry Brain is like that one. That's the character that I always was trying to like base on how I felt and how I saw things. And it changed over time. Like when I was a little kid, I called him Thunder Puncher. Because 8-year-olds are so great at coming up with names.
Right.
And I was always trying to build like a toy that looked like it, and always changing what I thought it was going to be before I realized where the character was and how to make him a little more three-dimensional.
Yeah. The good thing about the Joe is if you had a little screwdriver, you could unscrew them in the back, and you could kind of mix and match. To create your own guy. Because I actually put bigger legs on the Sergeant Slaughter, because the Mailway one, he had like these super skinny legs. I gave him the smallest legs, so I gave him someone else's legs, so he didn't have such skinny little feeble legs.
Yeah, I remember that. That was always weird.
Yeah, I don't know what was up with that. I always felt bad for so. I don't know if because they made his upper body so big, and they had to use so much weight-wise of plastic. They made the legs real small. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. Those toy makers always being so shysty.
Have you watched on Netflix the toys that I forget the name of the show now? It's like the toys that made us. It's an awesome. I think there's 4 up there, and they just renewed it for next season. But there's one about He-Man, one about G.I. Joes, one about Star Wars, and one about Barbie.
I know the one you're talking about. I haven't watched it. I've been watching like creepy, detective dramas, like stuff like the Frankenstein,
which is
Frankenstein
great.
Chronicles.
Yeah, I love that show.
Yeah, that show has got like the most disturbing portrayal of like why there has to be like rules. Going into buildings. There's whole like blocks of buildings that are abandoned, and there's guys pimping out 8-year-olds in it and all kinds of weird crud. And literally some of it's not even illegal, and it's got a lot of disturbing things in it. I've been watching that and just enjoying the hell out of it, and then just watching as many detective stories. I try to put it on while I'm working on my artwork, and I'll try to leave, like, if I'm not listening to something like the Bloodstrings or Metallica or something like that, then I try to watch something that kind of keeps in the tone, where it's either a little bit violent or a little bit campy or a little bit creepy. It's got to kind of be in one of those categories so that I can tune into where the story is.
The Alienist is also very good. It's the same kind of time period as Frankenstein Chronicles, and it's in England, and it's about people who research serial killers of the time. It's a very good show.
Yeah, the one I just started watching was Mr. Strange and Mr. Norrell.
I've not seen that.
It's this Edwardian tale about magic returning to England, and it's got lots of creepy stuff in it, where there's like a fairy that's trying to bend everybody to its will, and there's guys fighting over what magic should be, and people getting stabbed with swords and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's just fairy enough not to be like hardcore Black Mirror crazy, but at the same time, it's got like magic in it, and it's got guys in wigs and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm enjoying that one right now a lot.
I'll have to watch it. I also really like Mindhunters. That's on Netflix.
I got all the way through that one. I enjoyed I enjoyed seeing how all that stuff came about a lot, but at the end of it, it just got a little weird. Instead of telling us about the serial killers, I don't care about the relationships that cops have. I want to see like how they talk to the serial killers and learn from them and stuff. I could care less who's dating who and that other garbage that happens. You know?
The one guy who's had the real dark, deep voice, he was a real tall guy. I mean, they were real serial killers. Afterwards, I looked him up, and he was like he's still alive. He's still in jail. And he did a lot of books on tape in the 80s, which is very weird to think of. Like this serial killer serving life in prison was like reading books, and it said if you like read any like of the big books like in the 80s, you might have heard the guy. It's like that's very weird to think.
That is weird and creepy. But you know what though, I love finding stuff like that. So it inspires me when I'm working on bad guys and when I'm trying to create villains. Whether like I spent a lot of time working on horror books. I did multiple issues of Vampire: The Lost Highway with Don Smith, and I spent hundreds of pages on Inheritance. And it's really good to stay watching something that's a little bit out there and a little bit creepy when you're trying to make something that's inside that tone, that gray world that some of the horror exists in. It's good to keep your mind in there when you're trying to create it. It could be damaging if you stay too long, but there's something about those kind of stories that just help you find that moment where you can do that slow burn and get into people's heads when you're making that creepy artwork. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely and have to embrace that when I'm making those.
Yeah. I don't know if it's something you want to talk about, but when you stopped doing Inheritance, is there any bad blood there, or was it like a mutual breakup?
I think it would probably be the definition of bad blood, actually.
Oh, really?
To sum up what happened with Inheritance, because we sold over 1,000 copies of that. We sold it on the East Coast, we sold it on the West Coast, and it was getting a lot of attention as an indie book. We got to be on local TV stations. We got to be on Without Your Head, and I am still proud of the work that was done. And I was able to create a lot of fantastic dark visual effects inside of that, along with Shu got to do some really interesting writing in it. But what it really came down to was the project I was making wasn't the same project that Shu was making. And we really saw the direction we needed to go as two different ways. And when both of us were realizing that and expressing it with each other, I don't think that either we were both exhausted because each one of those issues was between like 38 to 50 pages, and I was trying to get them out as quick as I was. It took a lot of work to get them done. And the stress of doing that combined with the realization that both of us wanted to take it in very different directions just created a rift that really couldn't be healed. And then there's some other stuff that, behind the scenes about the way we were talking to each other and treating each other that I'm not going to get like super specific on, but you add the stress of realizing that the project needed to go one way and somebody else wanted it to go a different way. And you combine that with those issues about how people communicate, and you end up in a situation where it's basically a hand grenade waiting to crack open and explode. And that's pretty much what happened. And Shu and I aren't friends anymore. We do not talk. And the property is kind of stuck in limbo as a result of the way things happened. And in the interest of professionalism, I think that's about as far as I can take that story
I
without
understand.
making myself sound like I can. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm still, like I said, I'm still really proud of the work I did. I learned so much about how light works. Shu has a very demanding expectation of things, and that demanding expectation kind of led me to really stretch my skills and learn a lot about how to do things with what I was working with. And I'm grateful for those experiences. In the end, Inheritance was a massive learning experience where I learned how not to collaborate, and where I learned what I wanted out of creating, and where I got to test skills that I never would have if I'd have been doing it only on my own.
No, that's good though. You get to use something out of it. But it's it's too bad that things didn't work out. But at the same time,
but
you don't know if Damage Inc. would have taken off.
Well, I'd like to think it would, but I'm happy the fact that I get to focus on it. Damage Damage has a lot of personal effects for me, as well as it's a lot of fun, and I get to do things a certain way. And I could not have been making both books at the same time. Inheritance was too demanding. I could not have been able to do both books at the same time. So, yeah, without being off Inheritance, I wasn't going to be able to do anything else.
Yeah. All right. I was just Kira was saying that soon she'll be going out of town for the suicide prevention walk, and but we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, she's gonna be at that suicide walk, and she's gonna be out there. And as a matter of fact, I believe she and several others are going to be cosplaying there too. Kira likes to cosplay as one of the characters that is actually based on her from Damage, named Sarah. Sarah is a character that I when I created it, it was really like this really minor character. It was just like, it was supposed to be the bratty little sister that annoys the other main characters as they're trying to get the real work done, and it ended up not being that at all. Every time I have to write the character Sarah into the story, she ends up doing something crazy that takes over the story, which I guess that is kind of a good metaphor for little sisters, right?
Right. That's kind of cool though that she would she's gonna cosplay a character based on her. It's like it's like very.
Yeah, I jokingly tell her that she's cosplaying as herself, which doesn't count.
Right. There's a little ego there, maybe, but no, I'm just kidding. I like.
No, she just really loves the way that she's helped me develop the character a little bit, and the character's she's also really interesting. Like, she's in the issue that I'm about to give out in Damage, it kind of shows some oddball things about her character that I hadn't really planned on. It just keeps evolving in the stories. In the first part of the Shadow Damage story, she's kind of driving things and ends up like dragging the characters in different directions. She's really sarcastic. And in the next one, she kind of takes over multiple pages, and she starts, like, you start getting these little hints about who and what she's really like. She probably interacts in the most honest way of any of the characters that I've ever created, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Weird to mention where you're on issue 3, you said, for Damage Inc.?
Issue 3 is out, and issue 4 is something that I'm hoping to have out here it's currently March. I'm hoping that by June I've got the next issue complete. And if I've got it done by then, which I should, then I will be having it up and ready for another Kickstarter. And then I'm going to be working on another story, introducing some more new characters, because I've got plenty of stuff planned.
Yeah, very cool. And the Poe Kickstarter is up. I'm very interested in that. It's very cool. You get a very busy man.
The Poe Kickstarter is up.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
I said you're a very busy man.
I try to be as busy as I can. If I'm going to die and I don't get everything that I was trying to get out of life done, it's not going to be from a lack of effort.
Right.
But yeah, everybody, please go check poe.angrybrainartworks.com. It'll take you right to the Edgar Allan Poe Chronicles, where we've got about 19 days left. We are only about $205 away from releasing another story, making it 14 stories. So this thing's going to be over 100 pages long, and it's going to be filled with both creepy awesomeness and campy awesomeness and black and white gray tone artwork in every direction. And like I said, it's got some great creators involved in it. So there's a lot of good stuff in it. Russell Nolte's got a ton of novels out, and he's been knocking things out of the park for quite some time with his books like Pixie Dust and My Father Didn't Kill Himself and a bunch of the other stuff that he's made. There's a lot of really great creators on it. James Macy did a wonderful job of bringing us together. I got to give him a lot of credit.
Cool. That's honestly not as you hear. I'm looking forward to reading that. Looks awesome. Love the whole idea. So it's always great it's always good to have you on here, James, and hopefully I'll have you back sooner than last time. I think it's been a while since we had you on.
Yeah, it's been a while, Neil. I'll make sure that I try to get back a little bit sooner, and we'll talk about some more awesome stuff as soon as I get some more awesome stuff done.
Very cool. And episode 11 and 12 of Cat Good, which is on the Without Your Head website, and it's also if you subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Those last two episodes were about the suicide prevention, so definitely check those out. They're not only are they it's kind of good, it's a fun podcast, interesting to listen to. Those are important episodes, so check them out.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the work that Jim and Kira and April did on those episodes. They're fantastic, and everybody should take some time to get to know them and listen to them. April's message of hope is something that even if you're not the person that's locked inside of that darkness, it's still a message that I think everybody deserves to be able to hear.
Well, it's been excellent having you on.
All right, man. Thanks, Neil. I'm going to be out of here, and I will talk to you soon, man.
Definitely. All right. Here's some... by the way, your new music of the month, just starting tonight, we have Deathwood, and they're an Italian horror punk rock band, so they're going to be playing right now.
Hey, this is Mr. Fish, political cartoonist and Hellraiser, and you're listening to Without Your Head.